As the strike here at York approaches the 6-week mark, only one thing remains absolutely sure, and that's that classes won't be resuming until January at the earliest. I'm Scott McLean, and joining me today is someone to give us the perspective of the university, someone who's actually been at the bargaining table, the Dean of Arts, Robert Drummond. Bob, thanks for taking time out of your day to join us today. So I guess knowing that classes can't resume until January, does that sort of take any pressure off you guys in getting back to the negotiating table to reach a
No, I
deal?
don't think so, because in order for classes to begin as early as possible in January, we would really be well advised to try to find a settlement before the 5th of January. Whether that can happen or not is another question.
Are you concerned at all about kind of complacency on this part, since, I mean, you don't actually have to, I mean, there's no pressure to get a deal until, I guess, January the 5th.
Well, nobody's feeling complacent about this. I think that both parties are probably interested in getting a settlement as quickly as possible. They just aren't very close together yet.
Now I know that you guys are saying, well, we're still very far apart. But the last time that I spoke to Graham Potts, he actually said that the union actually has made significant revisions to their proposal, and that you guys are close, and that they're proposing something that's historically close to what they've actually won in the past. Is this a matter of kind of communication breakdown, or is the mediator not seeing this as viable, or is this a matter of what they would say is you guys just refusing to bargain and not coming to the table?
I think if the mediator thought that the parties were close together, he would be bringing us to the table. That's what he's told us, and I presume what he's told the union. That if the parties appear to be close enough that a settlement can be reached with a round of bargaining, he would bring us to the table.
What about forcing a vote kind of on the final offer? The union has said that's something that they're going to kind of organize their membership to vote against, almost regardless. Is this something that you guys are at all considering, or what's the timeline for doing something like that?
Well, if we were to consider that, I'm told that it takes something like 10 days to organize the vote. By the time we ask the ministry to put our final offer to a membership vote, it would take about 10 days to set up the vote. The union has said that they believe firmly in collective bargaining. They don't believe in forcing their members to vote on a final offer. We haven't proposed to do that yet. Obviously, at some point, we may have to consider it. It's a very risky maneuver. As you know, an employer can do that only once during a round of bargaining. If we make our final offer to the union and it's rejected, in effect, what has been our ceiling then becomes our floor, and we have to begin figuring out what it will take to settle the strike.
If it were a final offer, would it be 2 years or 3 years? Because I mean, a lot of people are saying, well, 2 years is out of the, or 3 years is out of the question, and we'll only vote for a 2-year contract.
If it were a final offer, we'd have to decide what was going to be in the final offer before we put it to the union membership, and we would do that. The union membership would be the first ones to see that offer. I don't know yet what it will look like if we do it, and we haven't proposed to do that yet.
The union, their argument is that, well, since the markets are crashing, a lot of people are getting laid off, a lot of people are going back to school, and that actually enrollment's going to boost, and that's actually going to boost York's profits. Is there kind of any legitimacy to this claim that York actually is going to make more money out of the financial crisis because they're a university?
Well, first of all, nobody in the administration, or indeed most of the faculty, would refer to what York does as a profit-making venture. This is a non-profit organization, so we don't have profits. We occasionally have a surplus of operating funds over our expenses, but not recently. And where that operating, if you look at the operating budget narrowly, you may see some money that appears to be surplus, but in fact that money is usually going into a sinking fund for the debenture, where we've borrowed money to build buildings, or into mortgage payments where we've borrowed mortgage money to build buildings. So in effect, there are no profits to be talked about here. What there is the prospect of higher enrollment. With higher enrollment, yes, we get more tuition, we get more grants, but those grants and that tuition cover the costs that we have to bear, and if the costs per student go up, they go up. And so when we hire more faculty, or we hire more contract faculty to teach courses, clearly those costs have to be borne out of the tuition and grants that we receive. So growth in enrollment would be beneficial if we got enough per student from tuition and from grants to cover our costs. If we don't, it's not.
We're functioning more like a corporate structure and less like a government institution. Does there need to be more sort of checks and balances or accountability in terms of maybe not the top people getting pay raises and salaries and stuff like that? And if it did function more like a government organization, would that mean that perhaps there would be more money to be spread around to the lower ranks, which is this union that's on strike right now.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm in a position to comment on the president's salary since I didn't negotiate it with him. I didn't set it, and I'm not getting it, so I don't know what one can say in that regard.
Who does negotiate it? I mean,
the
where?
Board of Governors. Board of Governors makes an agreement with the
And
president.
the Board of Governors is accountable to whom?
Well, they're accountable pretty much to themselves and to the tuition-paying students and alumni, and so on. But they're really not. They are the fiduciary managers of the university's finances.
If they were accountable to, say, the provincial government, do you think that they'd be getting the exuberant paychecks that they receive right now?
I don't know. I think you'd have to ask the provincial government what they would do if they had control over the hospitals and the universities rather than simply providing funding to them. You note that the municipalities, universities, schools, and hospitals are sometimes referred to as the MUSH sector, which is the broader public sector to which the government provides some funding but do not control their activities. The universities and hospitals and school boards rather value their autonomy, and they would prefer not to have the government control what they do. If the government were to intervene, would they be able to attract people to manage an institution of this size for less money than we're currently paying? I don't know. But I know that if you took the president's salary and that of all of the deans and distributed among this bargaining unit, it wouldn't go very far. So it is an issue, I suppose, when you say here are some very well-paid people earning very large salaries to manage the institution and other people working in the institution earning less.
Right, but we're not just talking about, I mean, the top 5 or 6 people, which is a very insignificant amount of money. We're talking about even like all the tenure stream faculty and everyone who I guess has a long-term contract with York. If that were spread out and the contract people were all full-time, and I guess the pay scale was adjusted accordingly so that the top people weren't making huge amounts and everyone in between was making a more level playing field, would we be on strike right now?
No, if everybody currently in the contract faculty had full-time appointments and we were trying to manage on the same budget, clearly full-time salaries would be considerably lower. Would we be able to hire professors in a competitive market for professors if we had to offer salaries that reflected that lower wage? I mean, I recognize that is an issue, and the full-time faculty believe that they are getting a fair wage for what they're doing, and I think they would have some sympathy with the sense that part-time faculty are not paid nearly as well for what is essentially a teaching appointment. The consequence is that they have to teach more courses, don't have much time to do research, and don't build up kind of research profile. Universities across North America are now relying increasingly on part-time contingent labor, and that's not a good thing for universities. We all recognize that. It's not a good thing for those who are employed in those positions. So I recognize that it would be preferable in some respects for us to have many more tenure stream faculty, and many of the people who are currently contract faculty could occupy those positions. But we don't have the funding to do that, and that's not something over which the university has much control.
One more question. What do you see as the timeline for getting this strike over with?
I wish I could say. I think that at this point, if the parties were to get back together the period before Christmas or between Christmas and New Year's, there might be a settlement to be found that could get us back into the classroom in early January. But I think unless there is some signal from the mediator that we are actually getting closer together, then that's not going to happen. So then we're looking at probably bargaining in early January and not being able to settle until later in January. And I think that will be distressing because, candidly, the summer term comes into some jeopardy if we have to go past the middle of January.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Okay.